Welcome back. Today we are going to be attempting to do this physics paper 2 multiple choice. This is the February-March 2023 version, paper 2-2, and this is a fairly recent paper. It is the latest one, in fact. So let's get started. Now, one thing to note though is that this year, starting from 2023, all of the IGCSE students have to take 1 kilogram to be 9.8 newtons, and therefore effectively changing the acceleration of free fall, which is 9.8 now. The usual one is 10 meters per second or 10 kilogram newton per kilogram, but now it has changed to 9.8, and it is very important to remember as well for the future 2024, 2025 onwards syllabus changes. Okay. And with that away, let's start. Number 1. Which list contains 2 scalar quantities and 2 vector quantities? Now remember, a scalar has only magnitude, whereas a vector has both magnitude and direction. So things like velocity, and the scalar could be speed, and etc. But for here, if we look at the options here, the force and velocity are both scalar because they both have direction and magnitude, while the distance only has the magnitude. In other words, it only has the size or how long the distance is. And the mass as well does not have direction, and therefore B is the correct answer. Question number 2. The diagram shows the speed time graph for a car. Which row describes the motion of the car at point X and at point Y? Well, at point X, you can see this, since this is the speed time graph, the gradient of the graph is going to be showing acceleration, and therefore, since the gradient is also constant, we can say that it is moving with changing speed, because the acceleration means changing velocity or changing speed. And at y, we can see that the speed is constant, that there is no gradient. The gradient is equal to 0, and therefore this means that the car is moving with a constant speed, so D is the correct answer. Question number 3. 4 objects are moving in a straight line. The table shows the distance moved by each object in each second of its motion, in which object is moving with constant non-zero acceleration. So this has to be a constant acceleration, but the acceleration should not be 0. In other words, there has to be an acceleration, but the acceleration also has to be constant. So constant acceleration. And here, when we look at this in distance in first second, distance in second second, distance in third second, distance moved in fourth second, well, here we can see that the A option is all given 5, so there is no acceleration here whatsoever. In B, however, there is an increase in 1 meter of distance each second, so there is definitely an acceleration. And this acceleration seems to be constant because there's always change in 1 meter per second, and therefore B is the correct answer. Now, question number 4. The drag force on a car increases with speed. At 20 meters per second, the total drag force is 400 newtons. The mass of the car is 1,200 kilograms, and the driving force is a constant at 700 newtons. Which statement about the acceleration of the car at 20 seconds is correct? Well, this is because the acceleration is 0.25. But how do we know the acceleration is 0.25? Well, we can always, so they have given us okay, so essentially the drag force is basically air resistance. Air resistance is directly proportional to speed, so as you are increasing the speed, the air resistance will also increase, and therefore the acceleration will also as the drag force increases, the acceleration will decrease, because as the air resistance decreases, obviously the air is going to oppose your direction of movement, and therefore you're going to slow down, so it has to decrease as time passes. And how do we get the acceleration? Well, this is due to the formula F is equal to ma and F is the resultant force. There's the mass and acceleration. So first let's find the acceleration, which is A is equal to F over m. So A, the force that we have here is 1200, is 300, because the drag force is opposite of the driving force. So if the driving force is 700 newtons and the drag force is 400 newtons, the resulting force is going to be 300 newtons forward. And the mass of the car is 1200. Now this gives us an answer of 0.25 meters per second square. And so we get the acceleration of 0.25 meters per second square. So A is the correct answer. Now moving on to question number 5. A rectangular swimming pool is 50 meters long, 25 meters wide. It contains water at a depth of 2 meters. The density of the water is 1000 kilograms per meters cubed. What is the mass of the water in the pool? Well, for this question, it mostly involves a two-step process, and because I always like to draw out the diagram. So it's 50 meters long, 25 meters wide. Okay, and it gave us the density, so rho is equal to m over v, and it wants us to find the mass, so m is equal to rho times v. So the density here is 1000, and the volume here, the volume is not given, but we can find the volume if we got the height, the length, and the width. So we just have to multiply 50 times 25 times 2. Now this will give us an answer. If you put that in your calculator, it will give us an answer of 2.5 million or 2,500,000 kilograms, and therefore D is the correct answer. Number 6, an object is rising vertically at constant speed through the water. There are 3 vertical forces acting on it: the weight, the drag force, and the upward force. Which diagram shows the magnitude and the direction of the vertical forces acting on the object? Well, here we can see that the drag has to be opposite of the upward force, or the weight has to be always downward, because weight, remember, always acts downward, and the drag is going to act opposite of it, so it's going to act okay. So and then upward force is going to obviously act upwards, and therefore D looks like a right answer. Question number 7. There are 2 boys of equal weight sitting on one side of a seesaw as shown. The father of weight 1000 newtons sit on the other side. The seesaw is balanced and is being used so that it moves up and down. During one part of the cycle, the father descends through a distance of 40 centimeters. At the same time, the boy near the pivots rises through 20 centimeters, while the other boy rises through 80 centimeters. What is the weight of each boy? Well, for this, it is we have to clearly understand the question first before we attempt to do the question. And so we know that there is a 40 centimeter distance between the father and the pivot, and there's a 20 meter between the boy, and there is an 80 meter between the second boy. And therefore we can say, we have to use the law of momentum, the law of moments. Therefore, it is the anti-clockwise moment. It has to be equal to the total clockwise movement. And so we have to say that we have to assume that the father weight is 1000. So we can say moment is equal to force times this perpendicular distance. And so the total anti-clockwise motion is 1000 times 40 centimeters, so that is 1000 times 40 centimeters, which is basically 0.4 meters, and if you multiply it, you will get 400 Newton meters, and then in the other side you will get there's a y of 0.2. So yeah, because this 20 centimeter is 0.2 and 80 centimeter is 0.8. And because the boy has equal weight, we can each give them letter to represent each boy. So it's going to be 0.2b, plus 0.8b. So those are the 2 boys combined. And so this is going to give us 1b, and it's going to give 400, and therefore b is equal to 400 newtons. And therefore b is the correct answer. Question number 8. A student measures the length of a spring. She then attaches different weights to the spring. She measures the length of the spring for each weight. The table shows her result. What is the extension of the spring with a weight of 3 newtons attached to it? So weight of 3 newtons, we have to search the table. And now we can see that the length, this is not the extension yet. We have to find the extension also. And the extension is basically the length minus the original length. So the length here is given 533 millimeters, and the original length is when the spring is unstretched, and therefore we have to look at the 0 Newton part of the graph, part of the table. So 533 minus 520, and this is going to give us an answer of 13 millimeters. And therefore D is the correct answer. Question number 9. The momentum of a body is changed by a force acting on it for a period of time. Which action increases the change in momentum? Well, remember that momentum is force is equal to change in momentum over time. So change in momentum is equal to force times time. And this means that if we double the force, we are going to increase or double the change in momentum. The time is going to be constant here. It's going to be constant for the same time, and therefore B is the correct answer, because it says doubling the force for the same time will increase the change in momentum, as it is represented by the equation, and it is also directly proportional, and therefore B is the correct answer. Question number 10. The equation is used to find the change in GPE, gravitational potential energy, of an object can be written as, okay, where E is the change in gravity, blah blah blah. Okay, which rules gives quantities Y and Z? So this is just a question testing on your knowledge about the how well you know the formula. So remember, GPE, or gravitational potential energy, is equal to mass times gravitational field strength times height, and this is the usual answer. I mean, this is the formula that you have to remember by heart. And so Y has to be a mass. They already given the height, so we need a gravitational field strength. So A is the correct answer. Question number 11. A machine has a power input of 200 watts, a useful output power of 1 kilojoule in 6 minutes. Now this kilojoules is energy, and this is time. And by using the power formula, we can work out the power using these two units. So 1 kilojoule is basically 1000 joules, and 6 minutes is basically 6 minutes times 60, and therefore we are going to get 2.7778 joule. And then we are going to, it asks you the efficiency. The efficiency is basically total useful power over, which is the total useful power, which is this one, over total input. And therefore the total input is 200 given in the question. Now we times it by 100. Now this gives us 1.38, which is the same as 1.4%. And therefore C is the correct answer. Moving on. Question number 12. What is the unit of power? Well, power is not power. The unit of power is watt. So 1 watt is equal to 1 joules per second. So is the official unit is watt. 13. The diagram shows a rectangular block of weight 16 newtons resting on a flat surface. What is the pressure at the base of the block due to its weight? Now, if we are talking about flat surfaces and solid objects, we have to remember the pressure formula, which is pressure is equal to force over area. And since it's asking for the pressure, we have to know the area of the base, because it is resting on the base on this flat surface. And this area seems to be 36, 9 times 4, 36. I'm sorry, 5 times 4, 20. And the force that is exerted is 16, which is its weight. So we will get an answer of 0.80 Newton per centimeter square. and therefore C is a reasonable answer. Question number 14. An oil tank has a base area of 2.5 meters square and is filled with oil to a depth of 1.2 meters. The density of the oil is 800 kilograms per meter cube. What is the force exerted on the base of the tank due to the oil? Well, for this question as well, we have to use formulas to work this out. This is a two-step question. So pressure is equal to force over area, and force is equal to pressure times area. And the pressure here, the force here is going to be the pressure, which is 900. I'm sorry. Firstly, here we have to work out the pressure of the oil. So pressure in liquids is rho GH. So 800 times 9.8 times 1.2. This is going to give us 9408 pascals. Now, using this pressure, we are going to find the force. So force is equal to pressure times area, and therefore the pressure is 9408, while the area is 2.5. This is going to give us an answer of 23520, which is the same as 24,000 newtons, and therefore D is the correct answer. 15. A sample of gas is trapped in a rigid container. As the temperature of the gas is increased, the pressure increases. Which statement is not correct? Not correct, remember? Okay, so the gas molecules have radiokinetic energy. This is the correct statement because the temperature is increased. And because the temperature is increased, the gas molecules will hit the wall of the container harder. This is correct. The gas molecules hit the walls of the container more frequently. This is also correct. The gas molecules move farther apart. No, this is not correct. So we have to choose the not correct one, which is D. Question number 16. What happens to the temperature of a liquid when it increases? What happens to the temperature of a liquid increases? Okay. Well, what happens? Let's see. The mass of the liquid increases, making the liquid less dense. Okay, when the temperature increases, usually we have like a thermal expansion, and thermal expansion is basically the volume being increased. So the volume of the liquid will increase, making the liquid less dense. So C is the correct answer. 17. A bar of metal, which is a good thermal conductor, is heated at one end. What is the main method of transfer of thermal energy along the bar? Well, this is a piece of metal that we are talking about. In metals, they transfer via two methods, but the main one has to be with the electrons. The free-moving electrons transfer and vibrate, and they pass along the energy, and therefore heat is being passed around, and therefore C is the correct answer. Question number 18. A transverse wave moves around a rope. The diagram shows the position of the rope at one particular time, which two label points are one wavelength apart. Well, this is letting us find one wavelength. One wavelength typically is like this, from this end to another end. It could also be from one trout to another trout. So for example, from here to here is also a wavelength. There are many ways of looking at which is a wavelength or not, but here we can see that X and Z gives one full complete wavelength, and therefore X and Z is the correct answer, so C is the correct answer. Now, moving on, question number 19. Light in a transparent plastic meets with boundary with the air. Light is transmitted in air only if the angle marked is greater than 36 degrees. What is the refractive index of plastic? So we have to find the refractive index. Okay. So now we have to know that this is greater than 36. It only transmits into the air if it's greater than 36. So the refraction will only occur when the angle is greater than 36 degrees. And now we can see here, we can draw an imaginary normal line, and here we can see the refraction is 90 degrees, the R is equal to 90 degrees, and this has to be 36 degrees. But this is not the angle of incidence. To find the angle of incidence, we have to 90 minus 36 because there's a 90 degrees, and so we got 54 degrees, and this is the angle of incidence. So remember the formula of refractive index. It is just a ratio of the incidence and the refracted ray. So n is equal to sine r over sine I. Because r in this case is greater than I, we have to put r on top. So okay, so we have to put sine 90 over sine 54 of sine 36. This will give us 1.23 or just 1.2 in general. So C is the correct answer. Question number 20. A thin converging lens has a focal length f. An object is placed to the left of the lens as shown. Where is the image formed, and how does the size compare to the image, to the object? Well, here we can see its focal length, and at the end of the focal length there is a focal point of the principal focus. And now we can see the object is between the center of the lens and the focal point, and this means that this is a magnifying glass. It is used to see enlarged objects, so the rays are not going to meet on the other side, but it's going to be on the same size of the lens of the object, and the image size is going to be enlarged or magnified, so it's going to be larger than the object. So C is the correct answer. Question 21. Which diagram shows what happens when a ray of white light passes through a prism? Well, here we can see A is definitely not possible, C is possible, but they are not refracted this way. B is possible, D is also possible, but here we can see that this is going in the wrong direction. This is correct, this is also correct, so D is the correct answer. Question 22. A television station transmits a signal to the television receiving dish. A television has an on and off indicator light. The television is switched on by a remote control, which changes the indicator light from red to green. Which electromagnetic wave is used in these actions and has the longest wavelength? Well, the longest wavelength has to be A, because the electromagnetic wave that is being transferred here, it is called the microwave, and the microwave is it has the second longest wavelength. And if you might be wondering why it is not B, because B is infrared. Infrared is in remote controls, and then this is red and green, so this is obviously visible light. And visible light does not have the longest wavelength, so A is the correct answer. Question 23. A student makes a list of some applications of waves. Okay, which applications uses ultrasound wave? So in ultrasound waves, we use the medical scanning of soft tissue, such as seeing the inside of a stomach, and then we also use it in sonar to calculate ocean depths. So 1 and 3 is correct, and so C is the reasonable answer here. Question 24. The diagram shows a bar magnet at rest on a smooth horizontal surface. A length of the soft iron wire is held parallel to the magnet. The wire is released. What happens? Well, the wire will move towards the magnet, and this is because soft iron is a magnetic material, and therefore it will attract from the magnetic field of the magnet. Therefore B is the correct answer. 25. Which diagram shows electric field pattern and direction around a positive point charge? So positive, remember, it will always go to the negative. This is a charge, and so A is correct. 26. A laboratory has a standard wire of known resistance. It has also other wires made from the same material as the standard wire, but of different lengths and diameters. Which wire would definitely have a resistance of less than the standard wire? Well, the wire length. So resistance is directly proportional to length, and resistance is directly inversely proportional to diameter. And so what this means is that if the length increases, the resistance will increase. If the diameter increases, the resistance will decrease. And here it says you want a resistance that is less resistant. So we have to obviously lower the length, so the resistance will be lowered. Right, it will be lower. And then we want to have a less resistance, so we have to increase the diameter. So the diameter has to be larger. So C is the correct answer. Question 27. The graph shows the relationship between the current in the current circuit component and the potential difference across it. The graph has a straight section and a curved section. What happens to the resistance of the component in these two sections as the current increases? Well, remember the current, this is a current voltage graph, and so the gradient that is showing is basically I over V, and this is equal to 1 over R. So remember, resistance is equal to voltage over current, but the gradient here is showing 1 over R. 1 over R is equal to I over V. It is the opposite of this, and therefore if this value decreases, this is going to also decrease. If this thing decrease, the resistance will increase. If the inverse of the resistance decrease, this basically means that the resistance is increasing. And so you can see that in the strict section, there is no change in resistance. In the curved section, however, the resistance is going to increase. Question 28. The diagram shows part of a circuit. What is the combined resistance of the resistors? Now here we can see there is in series and as well as in parallel. So always go for the series first. So 2 plus 1 is equal to 3 ohms. That's the total in series. Now this 3 ohms is going to be, we have to work out for the parallel now. So remember the parallel formula, 1 over R total is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. And so 1 over 3 plus 1 over 4 is going to equal to 7 over 12. 7 over 12 is equal to 1 over R total. So we have to flip it to get the inverse. So resistance will be 12 over 7, which is equal to 1.7. So 1.7 ohms is correct. Okay. It's question 29. The diagram shows a circuit which includes 2 resistors and a battery. The voltmeter reads 6 volt. What is the potential difference across the 30 ohm resistor? Well, for this, we can see that this is a potential divider. And in a potential divider, we have to know the equation, which is V1 over V2 is equal to R1 over R2. And so here we can see that the resistance 1, resistance 2, so this is 10 ratio 30, 6 ratio something. We want to know the potential difference across this. So just use the ratio technique or this formula, whatever you want to. But it's going to be like this, 10 over 30 is equal to 6 over x. We want to find x, so rearrange the formula. We are going to get 18 volts. Question number 30. A wire is moved in a direction perpendicular to a magnetic field. The 3 changes are suggested. The speed of the movement of the wire is increased. This is okay. The magnetic field strength is decreased. Okay. The direction of the magnetic field is reversed. Which changes will increase the electromotive force induced in the wire? So there are only 3 factors that there are only 2 factors that actually there are many factors, but just let's look at the statement here. So statement 1 says that the speed of the movement of wire is increased. correct. If you increase the wire, the EMF induced will be higher. And second statement states that the magnetic field is decreased. If it's decreased, then the EMF induced will also be decreased. So this is definitely not of use. Question number statement 3. The direction of the magnetic field is reversed. Well, this will do nothing for the electromotive force that is being induced in the wire, and therefore only one is correct. So B is the correct answer. Question number 31. A wire is moved across a magnetic field. This causes an induced current in the wire. The induced current interacts with the magnetic field to produce a force on the wire. In which direction is the force? Okay, well, this is going to be so it's going to be opposite direction of the movement of the wire. Well, this is basically Lenz's law, and Lenz's law states that if this magnet that is moving towards towards an object, it will always oppose the direction of motion. The newly created magnetic field will always oppose the direction of motion. So just remember that the newly created magnetic field will always oppose the direction of motion, and therefore it will be in the opposite direction of the movement of the wire. 32. 100 efficient step-down transformer has voltage P and a current IP. Which rules compare the secondary voltage with P and the secondary current IP? And remember the formula IP, VP, IS, VS. Now this is assuming that we have 100, that the transformer is 100% efficient. When in reality it is not 100% efficient. And so we have to find the secondary voltage. The secondary voltage has to be less than the primary voltage because it is a step-down transformer. And for the secondary current, which is the IS, you can just rearrange it. So if the voltage of the secondary decreases, the secondary current will increase because they are inversely proportional. And therefore C is the correct answer. 33. The scattering of alpha particles by a thin metal foil supports the nuclear model of an atom. Why are alpha particles used instead of neutrons? Well, this is very easy. This is because alpha particles are positively charged. Therefore, D is the correct answer. 34. An iron nuclide is represented by the symbol shown, 26Fe56. Which statements about a nucleus of the iron nuclide are correct? Well, the nucleus contains 56 neutrons. No, the symbol that is usually the symbol on the top is usually the mass number or the nuclear number. That is basically the proton plus neutron. The down number, the Z, is the proton number. And so it does not contain 56 neutrons. This is wrong. Statement 2 states that the nuclear number is 30. No, the nuclear number is written there. It is 56. The proton number is 26, yes. And therefore 3 is the only correct one, so D is the correct answer. 35. A sample of radioactive isotope has an initial rate of emission of 128 counts per minute and a half-life of 4 days. How long will it take for the rate of emission to fall down to 32 counts per minute? Well, so it has a half-life of 4 days, and it initially is 128 at 0 minutes, and we have to know after how long it will fall down to 32. Well, so we have to basically just keep halving this number, this value, until we reach the 32 counts per minute. So let's try that. 128 halving that would give us 64, and halving 64 would give us 32. And so you can see there are 2 half-lives. 2 half-lives. And since one half-life is 4 days, 2 times 4 is equal to 8. So it will take 8 days for the count to drop from 128 to 32. So C is the correct answer. 36. Several scientists are working in a laboratory. The scientists are experimenting with sources which emit ionizing radiation. Each scientist is given a list of safety rules. 3 of the rules are shown. Keep at least 2 meters away from each other. Okay. Do not stay longer than 4 hours per day in the laboratory. Okay. Stay behind that line screen. Okay. Which safety rules are for protection against the effect of ionizing radiation? Now remember, ionizing radiation includes all the 3 radiation: alpha radiation, beta radiation, and gamma radiation. And so which safety rules will protect against all 3 of them? Not only one of them, but we have to protect against 3 of them. So rule 3, stay behind the red line screen, is correct because it can prevent all alpha, beta, and gamma. Rule 2 says that do not stay longer than 4 hours per day in the laboratory. Yes, this can minimize your exposure time. And so exposure time is a very important factor when it comes to safety. So this is also correct. And safety rule 1 says that keep at least 2 meters away from other people. Now this does not work because remember, even though alpha has a range of 10 centimeters in the air, and beta has around 100, but gamma has around 100. It has around 10,000 meters of coverage, and so you would, in theory, you have to stay around over 10,000 meters so that you can be protected, but it doesn't work that way. So rule 2 and 3 only works, so D is the correct answer. 37. Which data is needed to calculate the average orbital speed of a satellite on a planet? Now notice the average orbital speed, we have to remember the formula. V is equal to 2 pi r over t. This is the time period. And r is the distance of the satellite from the center of the planet. So we would need this information. We would not need the radius of the planet. We would also not need the rotation period of the planet, but we would need the time period of the satellite to orbit the planet once, and therefore B is the correct answer. 38. Approximately how long does it take for the moon to complete one orbit of the Earth? Well, that's what we call a month. 1 month is how long it takes for the moon to orbit the Earth, which is approximately 28 days. 1 day is for the time taken for the Earth to spin around its axis. 1 year is the time taken for the Earth to revolve around the Sun. So I hope you really distinguish between these 1 year, month, and days, because it's basically childish level. 39. The energy generated in stable stars come from nuclear reactions. Which type of reaction occur in the Sun? Well, in the Sun, we know that nuclear fusion happens. So the hydrogen nuclei will join together to form helium nuclei. This is called hydrogen fusion. Okay. Question 40. 2 quantities define the Hubble constant HO, the speed at which the galaxy is moving away from the Earth V, the distance of the galaxy from the Earth D. What is the relationship between V and D, and what is the current estimate for the Hubble constant? Well, so remember the equation V is equal to HOD, and the Hubble constant is equal to, the Hubble constant is basically a ratio of the speed at which the galaxy is moving away from the Earth and the distance. So if we draw a graph, it would be against speed against distance. And so Hubble basically plotted out so many of these lines, and his line of best fit is called the Hubble constant. Anyways, so the relationship is that V is directly proportional to D. So HO is basically a constant value, Hubble constant, hence the name. So if the d is increasing, as the distance increases, the speed at which the galaxy is moving is also increasing. So it is directly proportional. And the current estimate for the HO, remember the Hubble constant, you have to remember this by heart. It is 2.2 multiplied 10 to the power negative 18 per second, or s to the power negative 1, whatever you want to write it. But you have to remember this value by heart. And remember, if you want to find the age of the universe, it is basically the inverse of the Hubble constant. Okay, everyone, this is it. I hope you understand every single question that I'm trying to explain. If you do not get some of them, you can leave them in the comment below. I will be helping you. So thank you again for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment down below which versions or other subjects you would like me to do. But currently I only do 3 sciences, which is biology, chemistry, and physics. If you would like some also like specific topic questions of the syllabus, I could make a video on that, of specific chapters of for example, let's say equilibrium from chapter 7, I suppose, from chapter 6 in chemistry. I could do that as well. So yeah, just comment down below. Thank you for watching again. Have a nice day. With love, Kafka.